Hello and welcome to the Preserve Management Learning Center. Today I'll be discussing a project I worked on several years ago to enhance movement for mule deer through a wildlife tunnel in an urban area in San Diego County. Be a discussion about wildlife cameras, using wildlife cameras in kind of a before and after setting, but also educational about how you can help mule deer go through a tunnel. So this is the city of Carlsbad in San Diego County, California. The purple area is the boundary. The light blue are preserve areas in the city of Carlsbad. And the red lines are corridors for wildlife movement. As you can see, it's a very urbanized setting. Not a lot of habitat left. To ensure good movement of wildlife in these roads in urban areas, we had wildlife tunnels put under roads and to ensure their protection and to minimize roadkill. And so this is the preserve that we're working on within that Carlsbad area. It's called Carlsbad Oaks, and you can see there's a wildlife corridor shown here in red where animals move up and down this creek area to the east and west through the preserve, and bisecting that is a road, and under that road is a wildlife corridor, a wildlife tunnel, to help animals go under and connect and move from one end to the other. And this is a tunnel that worked really well for a lot of species. We had a camera mounted in the tunnel for about 5 years, 650 trap nights, so we weren't running it continually, but we were running it a lot every year, and we had a lot of different species going through these tunnels. And the one species that we weren't getting a lot of movement was mule deer. And we knew the deer were there. We didn't really know their abundance, so we didn't know if it was an abundance issue. Maybe they didn't want to go through the tunnel. Some of those questions were not answered, but clearly they were deer, and they were deer on both sides of the tunnel, and some of the folks that work in the area saw them crossing the roads in the mornings and evenings. So I went out to take a look, and I felt that the vegetation was the issue. There's too much vegetation on the south and north side of the tunnel, and they probably couldn't see through the tunnel. So we made this study, and we had the camera data before any vegetation was removed. And then we did the camera work afterward to see if our work was in fact helping the deer. And pretty simple methods. We installed a camera in the middle of the tunnel, perpendicular to the movement. And we used various camera types, Cuddyback, Bushnell, stealth cameras. Since it was almost a 10-year study and it's been going on for 10 years now, some of these models became old and outdated, or cameras were stolen. So each camera was pretty similar, but they had some differences, mostly in the trigger response. In most cases, we had a 1-second delay, but in some cameras, they only allowed a 5-second delay. So we generally use 1 second, and that was sufficient for what we were trying to do. And then we removed some vegetation, and I'll show you that in a minute. So here's our tunnel, pretty small. It's a 4-lane road above it. That's about 100 feet long, 6 meters high, 6 meters wide, 3 meters wide and high. And as you can see, there's some vegetation in the back there that may be too thick for a lot of animals, or for the deer in this case. And we learned later, deer really like to see through the tunnel. We thought that was fine, but apparently it wasn't. And there is no fencing guiding the animals to this tunnel along the road. This fencing that you see at the top of the screen is actually just to keep people from falling over the edge. So some fencing may have helped, but what you can see really here is that the vegetation was very dense. And here's the tunnel. We saw lots of deer track out here, lots of deer track here. We knew they were running across at various points in this area, but they weren't using this tunnel. So I went out with a crew, and we just cleared a path about 100 feet to the tunnel and cleared some of the vegetation, make it really transparent for these animals to see through the tunnel. And here on the south side, just a narrow corridor to this area here where we saw a lot of deer track and sign. Here's a slide showing our vegetation removal, which is quite a lot. And you can see on this bottom left slide how you can see through the tunnel from a distance now, and I think that was very helpful for deer. But you can also see up here on the upper right how thick and dense it was at the tunnel opening. And so, yeah, like I said, we had 650 trap nights over a 5-year period with only 2 deer. And I think within 2 days of clearing the vegetation, we had deer moving through. And across the next 3 years, 1,000 trap nights, we had 452 photographs of deer going through. And in the last 2 years, we continue to have movement. And the only time the movement becomes constrained or we see less movement is when the vegetation grows back. So we have to stay on that on an annual basis. So I was giving this presentation in a variety of settings, and one was about cameras and wildlife cameras and the use of cameras in this before and after setting. Um, we do a lot of this manually. We don't have these fancy cameras with Wi-Fi or cellular connection that can connect to a system. So once a month we check these cameras. We just go through each picture, enter it in Excel, and use pivot tables. I think there's more advanced technology these days for sorting and going through your data. But this was, we got about 50, 60 photos a month. So that was not too labor intensive for what we were doing. Um, some other recommendations I've made is, camera theft was a big problem, and we really tried to lock down our cameras. We certainly need better software to go through this data. And I also recommend for deer, especially burst photo cameras like the Stealth camera provides, where it's 3 pictures per second. That's very useful for deer because a lot of times we found the first deer triggered it and all the rest were running through and they wouldn't be captured, especially if you had a 5-second delay. And a lot of times with a 3-second delay, you would get the whole family group, and then you could actually count how many individual deer are going through. It makes more photographs for sorting, but if you're particularly looking at deer, it worked really well. And just close by showing this photograph of a family of deer going through, which was a highlight for this study. We really felt we did a good job in helping preserve deer and reduce roadkill and get these deer through the tunnel. So I hope you enjoyed this presentation. Please hit the like button and make any comments in the bottom. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.